When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
We're going to start off this hour by talking about, I think, a really important subject, and that is academic freedom. And the story coming out of Quebec CEGEPs this week. It appears that some CEGEP students have been protesting the reading of certain works, the viewing of certain movies, and it has raised concerns about academic freedom and what is happening at the CEGEP level. A teachers' union calling for better protection of rights in the CEGEP system, and teachers are saying they're self-censoring. They're walking on eggshells. They're not talking about what they want to talk about with their students because they're afraid of disciplinary action. Let's go now to Michel Jean. He's the author of the book Le Vent en parle encore, and it's one of those books that's being cited that students are pushing back on. Michel, bienvenue à l'émission. Welcome to the show.
Yes, glad to be there.
So what was your reaction when you learned that your book was one of those books that students are pushing back on?
Well, Elias, I was quite surprised because Le Vent parle encore is a book about residential schools, so it's a serious topic, and for sure there are hard moments in the book, but nothing graphic, nothing in detail. And what surprised me is that my knowledge is there's only one student, but that was enough to have the teacher wondering, I understand the teachers, they don't want to have any problems, but is there like the point of view of one person is going to have an impact on what the whole classes receive as a course? I found that not necessarily a good thing, but I was surprised actually because the book has been studied in classes for a while. Kids like it because the characters in the book are about their age, and it's a topic that has a lot of impact into the new generation. But I guess that's the way things are right now also.
What are your thoughts on the notion that we hear a lot from students? CEGEP level, I hear it a lot from university students, that CEGEPs at universities and CEGEPs, they have to be safe spaces, right? And this student that is protesting about your book probably is saying, well, I don't feel safe if I have to read your words. What do you say to that notion about what universities CEGEPs are for?
Well, one's liberty starts where the other one's end. And for us, I'm from the Innu Nation, from an indigenous background, and for us it is also important that our stories are being told and well known. So if we're not able to tell our stories, is that useful also? I mean, I can understand if a book has graphic content and very difficult content that maybe it's not appropriate for somebody 17. It's not the case of Le Vent parle encore, in my opinion. And I give as an example what I was telling earlier is that there's many classes who use that book in class, and it was never a problem. So at the same time, that brings me to if it's not a mass movement, if it's just a few students, maybe the best thing is to have the teacher having a better protection so they're able to do their job without having to ask themselves what consequences there are going to be. Because in my case, it's one kid from what I know.
Yeah. And it must, I wonder how you feel, you're an Indigenous author, you're writing about an Indigenous experience like residential schools, and you have to wonder the person who's complaining, what is their background? I don't want to go with stereotypes, but it's sort of my stereotype would be, it would not be an Indigenous student complaining. It could be someone else who's, and I hate to use the term, but it seems to be sometimes an appropriate term, the woke or the extreme left that are protesting these things being exposed to certain items. I don't know if that's something you want to speak to, where this kind of stuff is happening. Of course, some people would point to the United States where there's the extreme right trying to ban books on a whole bunch of things. It just seems like the extremes are leading to let's not teach certain things.
Yeah, well, I'm a person from the middle, the center. And I'm certainly no extremist. I don't see myself that way. I tell stories that I think that are important. I don't do into graphic content because I don't think it's necessary
Mm-hmm.
to tell my story. But I think it is important sometimes that some stories have to be well known and taught. And that's the case with residential schools. Now, can you speak about residential schools without speaking about what happened? Maybe that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak about a residential school without speaking about the aggression that were numerous in those institutions? I think it's difficult. As a writer, I think my job is to tell a story, but with some very important form of respect, which what I think is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to be able to be 100% proof of 100% of the students in CEGEPs. There's always going to be people who don't agree. The question is, do we have to listen to one or two students because they don't like it, they don't
Mm-hmm.
feel it's good, or it's their opinion? Is that more important than the right of the majority of students to have access to that content? That I'm not sure.
What would you say
Again,
to,
I don't know the
yeah.
student who complained, and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
push on him.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's his background, so I'm not a comment on that. But my point is, if 99% of the students like it and 1% has a problem, well, we're still in democracy.
Yeah. What would you say to a student? Let's say you had to go into a CEGEP tomorrow and do a talk about exposing yourself to different ideas and reading works that may be difficult. What would you say to students that have been pushing to get some items removed from the classroom?
Well, I tried to explain to him what it is for an Indigenous kid not to have access to that story in his course because he doesn't want to hear about it. Put yourself in the place of that Indigenous students who has uncles, parents, grandparents who have their lives broken. And in many cases, in the Inu's communities, you have all those social problems that you see in the communities with alcohol, violence, kids dropping out of school. And if you walk in the streets of Montreal, you're going to see a lot of people living on the street. Indigenous communities are 2% of the population, but 13% of the people living down on the street in Montreal. So all those problems come from one thing, residential school, and how the Indigenous communities were deprived of their territories. Don't we have the right to tell that story? We have the responsibility to do it in a well-mannered way with respect. But don't the kids like him who go to school, who go to CEGEP, don't have the right that people around them also understand that part of the history so they can understand better the problems that you see actually in Indigenous communities? That's what I would tell them.
Michel, it's a brief discussion here, but it was a great discussion. I want to thank you so much for joining our listeners this morning.
Please do talk with you, Elias, anytime.
That's Michel Jean. He is author of the book Le vent en parle encore.